Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show on the 9th day of September 2021. Up first, hazardous weather graphic. There are no watches, warnings, or advisories. Let me get this thing cursor onto the right screen there. There we go. No watches, warnings, or advisories anywhere around the state. For the next day or so, or a couple of days. Interior out west looking good. Pretty good storm though in the Gulf of Alaska, or southwest of the Gulf of Alaska, actually, well southeast Kodiak Island. And then the bent back occlusion kind of stationary in the island today, bringing moderate to heavy rain, winds gusting up to 50 miles an hour at Kodiak State Airport at mid-afternoon. Didn't get a rainfall amount from them, but did get the peak wind gusts 50 miles an hour as of about 2 or 3 p.m. this afternoon. And then the front also edging clouds into the coastal areas of the Panhandle, pushing up to the North Gulf Coast. But you can see clearing over the eastern interior areas from Yukon, Porcupine River valleys there southward into the greater Fairbanks area, northern Copper River Basin. They pick up the clouds actually, central Copper River Basin. And then a trough out west, bringing areas of light rain and showers from the Seward Peninsula down across the southwest interior, and then in toward Bristol Bay there and across, kind of linking up with the moisture with the system in the northeast Pacific. And then also a system there bringing some light rain and breezy conditions to the Pribilofs. First batch of moisture rolling through midday there. Low pressure area still back to the west, and not heavy rain with that, about 1/10 of an inch falling at St. Paul, St. George. Winds gusting 20-25 miles an hour, so nothing serious there. And then just light rainfall amounts up to the North Kaliganek, for example. Southwest interior picked up about 1/10 of an inch, and up in Bettles in the Koyukuk Valley, they had about 1/10 of an inch precipitation too. And again, rolling this through, you can see that front pushing right up to the Panhandle, and actually making a bigger jog to the northeast there, or the east-northeast, than it is to the north. And it's just going to be actually just catching the North Gulf Coast with precipitation, not looking for much at all to move any farther north than the immediate coastal areas and mainly western Prince William Sound, but definitely push into the eastern North Gulf Coast as it's currently doing. So look for a good shot of rain to come in from Yakutat on down into the north coast of the Panhandle this evening, and now spread over the entire southeast coast toward morning. And on the chart today, you can see fairly tight pressure field with that 980 millibar low southeast of Kodiak Island there, with the winds, again, strongest winds at the state airport, 50 miles per hour, and 40 to 60 mile an hour winds kicking up from the Kamishak Bay area, southern Kenai Peninsula, gust to about 60 miles an hour at MacArthur Pass on the Kenai Peninsula, and they're about 1,200 feet, so not really a high elevation location, but it's just showing a pretty good wind field with this system. Rainfall amounts on the light side so far for the North Gulf Coast, and of course heaviest Kodiak Island, and lingering showers. Wrangell had a light shower this afternoon, 1/100 of an inch. They've ended most everywhere else there with increasing clearing. And then the showers over the western interior, central interior, back to the Seward Peninsula, southward to Togiak Bay and near Dillingham, and then that system moving across the eastern Bering, bringing the rainfall to the Pribilofs and to a lesser extent the Aleutians. For tonight, that next weak low center, 1,003 millibar low, drags the front across the western Aleutians. Maybe some drizzle, light rain with the warm front, Adak and Atka, but not too much, and dry for the eastern Aleutians. And that low center drifting east-northeastward, southern Gulf of Alaska, and the front pushing in toward the Panhandle. Look for gale force winds ahead of that front with increasing rain especially the central and south coast, but spreading over just about all the panhandle toward morning, and dry over the interior. Lingering showers from, say, Kivalina southward to a little more widespread there for the Nulato Hills and Norton Bay, and then down into the southwest interior, scattering out again around the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay area. And looking ahead to tomorrow for Friday, that system tracks northeastward there, so look for rain to push into the western interior and spread eastward across the Kuskokwim Valley, possibly spilling over the western Alaska Range into the western Susitna Valley and western Cook Inlet, with possibly dry conditions kind of in the warm sector of the storm there. So you could see some partial clearing maybe for the Bristol Bay area with lingering showers over the Aleutian Range. Those should be diminishing. Definitely less wind and rain for Kodiak Island later tonight and throughout the day tomorrow, probably losing the shower activity altogether, and look for some clearing without northwest wind developing as the high pressure builds over Bristol Bay. And that'll result in partly sunny skies for the Alaska Peninsula with light winds, but showers of the weak trough for the eastern Aleutians. And then that front dragging back out to the southwest keeps a chance of rain in over the western Aleutians, dry over the northern interior. And from about the White Mountains northward to the Arctic coast should be precipitation free and rain heavy at times. Another front develops and pushes in toward the southeast coast again as the previous one weakens into a trough and kicks off to the northeast. And then for Saturday, another front pushes more rain, possibly moderate in areas, into the Seward Peninsula. And actually all the west coast there from Cape Lisburne southward into Kuskokwim Bay, Cape Newenham. Dry for Bristol Bay. Interior Alaska looking pretty good as the low weakens off the southeast coast, keeping it unsettled and wet there, especially in the south. But look for partly mostly sunny skies to start the weekend. Southern Alaska right through the interior, Prince William Sound, Copper River Basin, and all the way up to the Arctic coast. And otherwise look for a front to bring some light rain from the Pribilofs to the eastern Aleutians. And for lows tonight, near 40 for the Copper River Basin, otherwise in the 40s. Lower 50s Kodiak Island and portions of the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow, 50s to lower 60s, all areas. Followed by lows Saturday morning, upper 30s to mid 40s, except upper 40s Kodiak Island, and lower 50s for the southeast coast, upper 30s or mid to upper 30s for the Kuskokwim Valley. And then high Saturday afternoon, looking in the mid 50s for the Kuskokwim Valley, upper 50s Bristol Bay, upper 50s South Central Alaska, some areas reaching 60, such as Seward. Copper River Basin near 60 or into the lower 60s, and upper 50s for the southeast coast. Up north, lows tonight, mid 30s, mid to upper 30s. North Slope Arctic coast south of the Brooks Range in the mid 40s or in the 40s. Lower 40s out towards St. Lawrence Island, followed by highs back into the lower to mid 60s again, a little bit cooler than today. Some areas pushing 70 at mid-afternoon over the eastern interior, but that'll be a little cooler tomorrow, near 40 for the Arctic coast, followed by lows Saturday morning, mid to upper 30s Arctic coast North Slope, upper 30s to mid 40s south of the Brooks Range, followed by highs cooler yet in the 55 to 60 degree range for the eastern interior, lower 40s Arctic coast, and down along the over the Bering Sea, lows in the 40s, all of the southwest interior areas, and highs in the 50s out that way, and lower 50s over the southwest interior. Not much diurnal change going on here in the temperatures. Mid to upper 40s for the lows on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, highs in the lower to mid 50s. And up next is forecasters from Juneau to talk about the incoming rain and wind.
Hello everyone, meteorologist Grant Smith here with the National Weather Service here in Juneau, here with Cody Moore, also a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. Cody, you know, it's not too bad out there right now, but looks like things are about to be changing as we head into the weekend.
Yeah, you know, we have a front coming through. We're going to bring some rain to the area starting tonight and lasting through Saturday morning. 1 to 2 inches of rain is possible across much of the Panhandle. 2 to 4 inches at higher elevations, which will cause some river rises across the area.
Okay, so but 1 to 2 inches, you know, at the sea level, 2 to 4 a little bit higher up. Is that normal for this time of year here in Juneau and Southeast Alaska?
Yeah, that's pretty normal for this time of year. So, you know, there's nothing really out of the ordinary. But, you know, rain will be heavy at times.
So not really expecting any flooding issues?
Right, flooding's not expected at this time. The main concern will be some small river rises.
Okay, and so we got rain coming in tonight. Are the winds picking up?
Yeah, we have a gale force front that's off the coast right now. So gale force conditions expected along the outer coast, you know, all the way from, you know, Prince of Wales Island all the way up to Cape Suckling. And then small craft conditions developing in the inner channels late tonight, continuing through the day Friday, and then winds in the inner channels diminish on Saturday.
All right, but Sunday, everything kind of calms down?
Yes,
now?
things are calm on Sunday. Small break before the next system comes in early next week.
So there we go. The second half of the weekend looking a little bit better than the first half. I've been Grant Smith with the National Weather Service here in Juneau, also along with Cody Moore, National Weather Service here in Juneau, Alaska.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to the first flying weather graphic, IFR Central Arctic Coast, marginal VFR in the North Slope into the Central Brooks Range, but south of the mountains, we've got VFR there, Upper Yukon Valley, all the way down into the Copper River Basin through Cook Inlet to Sitna Valley, marginal VFR, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, and most of the Panhandle. Some spotty IFR out along the southwest coast up to the Bering Strait, and a pretty good area of VFR from St. Matthew Island down to the Pribilofs. And IFR, Western Aleutians, marginal VFR, east side. And then for the afternoon, things look pretty marginal across the Seward Peninsula from the northern Bering down across the lower Yukon River Valley and Delta area there, right across Kuskokwim Valley, marginal VFR to the Western Alaska Range, southward to the Aleutian Range, and then some VFR, southwest coast, Nunivak Island, Alaska Peninsula, back to marginal VFR, about False Pass eastward to Adak. Then you hit IFR there to Amchitka, mostly marginal for the Gulf of Alaska and Panhandle. And then that's back to IFR for the southeast coast Saturday morning, most areas, and marginal VFR eastern North Gulf Coast there, Yakutat to Cape St. Elias, Copper River Basin, marginal VFR, Alaska Range, and then VFR north side there, eastern interior, up across the upper Yukon and Porcupine River areas. And then the IFR are back in the picture there for the North Slope and the Arctic coast, and then marginal VFR, central eastern Bering Sea. And then some IFR from Matka Island over toward Nikolsky. Then for the afternoon on Saturday, we've got VFR breaking out over the southwest Bering Sea there. So it looks like that'll progress eastward to about Atka Island by evening. Otherwise, the remainder of the Bering Sea, marginal VFR. Distinct lack of IFR out there. Only IFRs up there along the central Arctic coast and right over toward the border of the Panhandle. Otherwise, good VFR, southern Alaska and northern Kodiak Island and Prince William Sound. Passes Anatuvik, marginal VFR to VFR in the afternoon. Improving trend, look for the lowest flying conditions, possibly marginal VFR for Adigan as well in the morning hours. And then Lake Clark and Merrill, occasional marginal VFR throughout the day, especially western entrances in the afternoon. And then I'm going to go VFR for rainy with trend toward marginal VFR in the western approach in the afternoon, and then windy VFR. Isabel, VFR, Mentasta, also VFR, and Tanita, marginal VFR, trending toward VFR to start or to end of the day, or probably by end of the afternoon, VFR for Tanita. Portage, though, marginal VFR, same trend, becoming VFR. And for Chilkoot and White, looks pretty IFR-ish tomorrow for both passes. Freezing levels, 6,000 feet, interior Alaska, northern Panhandle, 8,000 feet down toward Dixon entrance. Surface, just catching Point Barrow, and then 4 to 8,000 foot freezing levels across the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And from there, looking at icing, kind of a swath out over the, from the southwest coast, southwestward to the western Aleutians across the Pribilofs of isolated moderate rime icing, and then areas of mixed icing with very isolated areas that would be moderate there for the west coast into the interior Alaska Range, and then maybe some more in the way of considerable moderate rime icing there for the northern Panhandle and the central areas. And moving on to the jet stream, good westerly flow right across the Aleutians and southern Bering Sea there. 90 to 95 knots or 80 to 95 knots there. So any systems developing in that flow will be moving quite rapidly to the east and east-northeast, and it sort of dives off to the southeast across Kodiak Island as flow splits over the western interior to the northern branch out of the southeast up to 65 knots. Seward Peninsula, 9,000 feet, south flow, 40 to 45 knots into the Panhandle, 40 knot westerlies, southwest interior, and 50 knots out of the west over the Pribilofs. Southeast 50 for the perb lofts at 3,000 feet, or South 50, call it. 20-25 eastern Aleutians, and up to 55 knots there for the eastern North Gulf Coast, 45 knots northern Panhandle, and then the Seward Peninsula low, creating westerlies of 25 to 30 knots from St. Lawrence Island. And winds decreasing there. Kodiak strongest earliest on. Of course, that'd be the heaviest turbulence there as well in the morning hours, improving in the afternoon as the winds diminish. But considerable moderate turbulence, especially for small aircraft for southern Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, and most of the Panhandle, especially central and northern areas. After the break, I'll be back with the marine forecast.
Greetings, star friends. Trace here. Conjunctions are used in storytelling as harbingers of fantastical plot lines and extraordinary events. But if you watch the sky enough, you'll see that conjunctions are actually pretty common. We've got a handful coming up. Let me show you. The term conjunction means objects are close together in the sky, and this week on September 9th, the thin crescent moon will meet the evening star of Venus in the west just after sunset. Then next week, we'll see an even bigger conjunction of 3 objects, the moon with Saturn on the 16th and then Jupiter on the 17th. Follow the moon all week to see it grow larger and pass the 2 gas giants. That's it. That's a conjunction. They're prophecies of great stargazing, but I wouldn't fear some kind of conjunctive power, other than the power to hold your attention while you keep looking up.
The Yukon Flats National Wildlife Refuge is a refuge in Alaska. It's the 3rd largest refuge in the National Wildlife Refuge System. North of Fairbanks, it's a vast ecosystem of wetlands. What drives this refuge are natural forces of fire, ice, and water.
The Yukon Flats has got a really interesting history. Back in the late 50s, early 1960s, there was a proposal to dam the Yukon River down by Rampart, which is downstream of the Yukon Flats. And it was a hydroelectric proposal. And so in order to assess the merits of that proposal, people got together because they were a little bit concerned about what the impacts might be on the Yukon Flats, the habitat, and all the people living within the Yukon Flats Refuge. There's quite a few people living within the refuge. We have 7 villages. So in order to figure out how special the Yukon Flats was, the Fish and Wildlife Service banded over 40,000 ducks within the Yukon Flats. And using the band return information, they found out that those ducks were using 45 of the 50 lower 48 states. They were using 7 foreign countries, and they were using most of the provinces over in Canada, as well as all the major flyways down in the lower 48. And so that identified that the Yukon Flats was a special breeding area, and that information, along with a lot of other public information that was gathered during that whole process, really ensured that the dam never did go in, and thus the habitat was preserved.
So what that did is it really highlighted the national importance of this area and how important conserving this particular area is for conserving many other natural areas in the lower 48 and even across the continent.
To protect the Yukon Flats Refuge because we have responsibility towards our future generations to leave land protected in the state that it is now. The Yukon Flats is a wild place. The ecosystem is intact and functioning, and you can't find that very many places in the rest of the U.S.
The Yukon Flats Refuge is among the most important places for ducks. So each spring, millions of ducks, and in addition to shorebirds and geese, raptors and loons, they all fly to the refuge to nest and rear their young, and the reason they are attracted to this area is because it has really enriched wetlands. There are lots of nutrients in the wetlands that provide a lot of food for the growing young.
We also have a lot of predator, prey species like bears and black bears, grizzly bears, wolves. We also have a lot of moose and fur bearers that use the refuge. So overall, there's just a great diversity of both upland, lowland, and migratory bird species that use the refuge.
Most people know the flats as a duck nursery, and that was one of the main purposes that was designed for, but a lot of recent research over the last decade has really illustrated how important it is to a variety of native endemic fish species for subsistence and recreational and commercial fisheries throughout the entire Yukon River Basin and out to supporting commercial fisheries out to the Bering Sea as well. So it supports a variety of different whitefish and salmon species, the northern pike, a little bit of everything that people rely on as cultural identities, but also for subsistence resources and where people go to recreate and enjoy being outside.
The type of recreation that you're going to find on Yukon Flats Refuge is very primitive. And what that often does is it gives people a complete break from some of the stresses of today's world. There are no cell phone towers out there. There are no roads. There are no trails. So any type of recreation that people have is entirely natural. The lands and waters within the Yukon Flats National Wildlife Refuge are open to the public to enjoy. And that's a really important tenet upon which the United States is built.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the coastal water forecast for tomorrow, you can see good gales along the central north coast, 35 to 40 knots out of the east and southeast. South 25 for small craft advisories on the south coast, and small craft advisories over the inside waters with gale force gusts. Stevens Passage southeast 25 gusts 40 knots, and Clarence Strait southeast 30 knots with gusts 30 knots, gust to 35 knots. And for the day on Saturday, winds will come down definitely and change direction, kind of variable up on the north coast, 15 to 20 knots. Seas still 8 to 10 feet though. And on the south coast, west-southwest, 15 to 20 knots with seas as high as 12 feet. Much lighter winds over the inside waters as well. Lynn Canal down to 10 knots from the south, and Stevens Passage southeast 15, Clarence Strait south at 15. Prince William Sound tomorrow, small craft advisories, northeast winds 25 knots. Gales for the eastern North Gulf Coast, east winds of 40 knots. Gale warnings also for the western North Gulf Coast. Minimum gales, northeast 35, seas around 17 feet. Small craft advisories, the Barren Islands, as winds come down to 30 knots and seas are around 16 feet. Small craft advisories, Kamishak Bay and Cook Inlet, north to northwest winds 25 knots. And north 15, north of the Forelands. And lighter winds in store for Saturday with Cook Inlet northeast 10 to 15 knots, 2 to 3 foot seas. Prince William Sound east at 10 knots, and the North Gulf Coast south to southwest 15 knots. Barren Islands southeast winds at 20 knots. Kodiak Island tomorrow, northwesterlies coming down throughout the day. Starting out strongest in the morning and then lightening up in toward the later part of the afternoon, but 25 knots, 25 to 30 knots out of the northwest, 8 to 13 foot seas. Alaska Peninsula, west-northwest, 20 knots, 7 to 8 foot seas. Small craft advisories for Bristol Bay, west winds at 25 knots. Southeast 25 knots for Bristol Bay on Saturday, with seas at around 5 feet. South 25 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, both sides of the peninsula with 9 to 13 foot seas. And small craft advisory southeast winds from Castle Cape to Sitkinak and up the east side of Kodiak Island, while Shelikof Strait's looking at a easterly wind at 20 knots. Eastern Aleutian, starting out with Unalaska Island, south to southeast, south to southwest, 20 to 25 knots, southwest 20 to 25, Unmak Island, Adak and Atka, and small craft advisories for Amchitka, southwest 25, and then 20 knot winds from the north from Kiska to Shemya. And for Saturday, bring it up to 30 knots there from Shemya all the way over to Adak from the west and southwest with seas around 10 feet. West 25 to 30 knots, Adak and Atka, and also small craft advisories for the Fox Islands for southwest winds to 25 knots with seas running around 10 to 12 feet. And for the southwest coast, small craft advisories, west winds 25 knots, 7-foot seas, and Norton Sound also a small craft advisory tomorrow, southeast 25 knots, seas 6 feet. Behind the front though, St. Lawrence Island, west winds at 20 knots, southwest 20 knot winds for St. Matthew, St. Paul, and St. George Islands. And for Saturday, Pribilofs back to small craft advisories with west winds at 25 knots and seas up to 10 feet. 25 knot southeast winds for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, while the Yukon Delta coast looking east at 15. West 15 for St. Matthew Island, and east winds at 20 knots for St. Lawrence Island. And small craft advisories you can see continue for Norton Sound there out of the southeast at 25 knots with 5-foot seas. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east-northeast winds 15 to 20 knots with seas up to 8 feet tomorrow. Northeast 15 with 7-foot seas on the central coast, and then small craft advisories, northeast 25, stronger winds but lower seas. 6 feet there all the way down to Cape Thompson to Wales, east winds 20 knots, seas 4 feet. And for the first day of the weekend there, small craft advisories for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast for east winds at 25 knots, seas down though to 5 to 7 feet from the previous day. East 20 knots with 4-foot seas for the central coast, 20 knot winds on the west side, and then from Cape Beaufort to Wales, small craft advisories for 25 knot winds. And for tonight, dry over interior Alaska, maybe isolated showers lingering there, eastern Alaska range. Otherwise, wind and rain increase along the coast of the Panhandle, slowly works inland. And rain and wind also for the North Gulf Coast there. And Kodiak Island starting to improve later tonight. Weak trough brings some shower activity in the western interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.